Good evening, everyone. This is Joy Coleman, Chair of the Lawrence Historic Resources Commission, and I'm going to call the meeting to order on this third Thursday of the month, March 21st. Avery, would you like to give preliminary information?
I can do that tonight, give Avery a break. My name is Ellie Mullins, and with me is Lynn Braddock-Zollner, the Historic Resources Administrator, and Avery Kerner, Planner 2. Welcome to the March 21st Historic Resources Commission meeting. Together, we will work alongside the chair to facilitate the meeting proceedings. Before we begin, I have a few reminders to share. Tonight's meeting is being recorded and broadcast on the city's YouTube channel and cable channel 25. For those who are attending the meeting virtually, please remember to mute yourself when you are not actively speaking to help minimize distractions. When the chair calls for public comment on an item, anyone attending in person may approach the podium to speak. If you are attending the meeting virtually and would like to provide public comment on an item, please use the raise hand function to be called upon. We also ask that everyone state their name before they speak to ensure that everyone is able to follow along. And now I'll turn the meeting back over to the chair.
Thank you, Ellie. Now we'll take a roll call of the commissioners. Commissioner Haynes.
Commissioner Haynes here.
Commissioner Johnson.
Commissioner Johnson here.
Commissioner Ezell.
Commissioner Ezell here.
Commissioner Klein.
Commissioner Klein here.
Commissioner Hawley.
Commissioner Hawley here.
And Chair Coleman is present. We will begin the meeting with Part A, Communications. Have we received any communications from other commissions, the State Historic Preservation Officer, or the general public?
You do have several communications in your packet information this evening that were updated to the packet earlier today. There were some letters about agenda item number 1, the public hearing for the First Presbyterian Church landmark nomination. And then there was additional information submitted by the applicant for item number 4, 609 New Hampshire Street rehabilitation. And it would be appropriate to discuss those communications with those agenda items.
Perfect, thank you. Now we'll call for ex parte communications from commissioners. Do we have any tonight? Nope, okay. How about declaration of abstentions for specific agenda items by commissioners? None. All right. Committee reports. I believe we have some.
We do. The Architectural Review Committee has met since your last meeting and discussed 2 of the agenda items on this evening's agenda. One is the 2145 Rhode Island Street, and there were some revised drawings that came out of that meeting. I'll let the ARC discuss those changes when that agenda item is being heard. And then also for 609 New Hampshire Street, there's some additional information for that item as well that can be discussed by the ARC at that agenda item. And then there was an ARC meeting for
742 Connecticut Street.
742 Connecticut Street. And do they want to discuss that with the agenda item?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. So yes, there
I believe we also discussed one that then was pulled from the agenda, so we...
Yes, it would be appropriate for a member of the committee to just briefly discuss that item.
Okay, that was 1332 Kentucky. Is that the right address?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes, so that one was discussed in ARC, and it was, or 2 other options were shown to the ARC committee for that item, and we discussed the pros and cons of all those different options. And so it's my understanding that he was going to choose one and submit it. But Jay, do you have anything to add on that? Is that memory correct?
And that, I believe, is where the ARC meeting left off. The staff did have some conversations with the applicant, and they are looking to do a different design, which will be submitted and be either on your April or May agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
this is Commissioner Klein. I also had a question about when we're going to hear a report about historical markers.
We are working now to twofold. There are two separate committees for historic markers. We're working on setting dates for both of those. One is a committee that for the Rice and Dowdell markers. We have had some excellent news that a member of the public has offered to pay for those markers. So hopefully they'll be meeting the fast track and moving forward and are scheduled to be on your April HRC agenda. If we can get the committee together and approve those to get on that April agenda. And then we have a matrix and some discussion for the marker committee to look at, and we are looking at trying to schedule a meeting of that committee in April.
Thank you.
And there is one other committee, and I'm forgetting the name of it, that Commissioner Haynes was appointed to. Were there any reports from your committee?
The Brick Streets and Sidewalks Multimodal Committee, forgive me for not bringing the full name to hand here, is going to have a meeting on March 25th.
All right. So we'll get a report next month. Perfect. Okay, was that all the committee reports then? Yes, if so, we'll move on to item B, consent agenda. We have a motion.
Commissioner Klein moves approval of the design review applications.
And I'll second that. Chair Coleman, are there any discussions to be had? No? No commissioner wants to discuss. Okay, so then let's take a vote. Commissioner Haynes?
Commissioner Haynes, aye.
Commissioner Johnson?
Commissioner Johnson, yes.
Commissioner Hawley?
Commissioner Hawley, aye.
Commissioner Ezell?
Commissioner Ezell, aye.
Commissioner Klein?
Commissioner Klein, aye.
And Chair Coleman is an aye. Item passes 6-0. Now is time for public comment. If there is any public comment on items that are not on the agenda tonight, now would be the time to bring those forward. Are there any in the room or online?
None in the room and none online.
Great, thank you. Now we'll take item D, public hearing items. And the first on the agenda is item L 23-00432.
Good evening, Commissioners. Lynn Braddock-Zollner, Historic Resources Administrator. This is a landmark nomination for the First Presbyterian Church located at 2415 Clinton Parkway. It is being nominated to the Lawrence Register of Historic Places for its architecture. This has been a little bit of a unique situation in that we have new notification requirements under the new Chapter 22 of the City Code, and those notification requirements for landmark nomination public hearings, which this is, would be to publish in the city's official newspaper at least 14 days in advance of the public hearing, and at that same time notify first-class mail property owners within 250 feet of the proposed landmark nomination. Staff did meet those statutory requirements. The public hearing notice was in the March 7th Lawrence Journal World public notice section of the paper, and postmarked letters that were postmarked on March 7th as well, both meeting that criteria established by the code. However, for whatever unforeseen circumstances with the United States Post Office, those letters took a long time to get to the property owners within that notification area. And as a matter of fact, we have one entity that contacted us that they still have not gotten their letter. A couple got them this week, and then one got it last Thursday. So the communications that staff mentioned earlier in the meeting, several of them were requesting that the Historic Resources Commission continue this public hearing until the April 21st, 2024 meeting, so that they have adequate time to study the landmark nomination and come up with any comments that they may have pertaining to the nomination. Staff is prepared to move forward if it's the Commission's decision to go ahead and hear the landmark nomination this evening, but staff is recommending that you open the public hearing, which you just did by opening the conversation for this item, and then continuing the public hearing until the April 21st Historic Resources Commission meeting. We do have members in the audience that wish to speak to this item, either for or against it. So it would be up to the commission whether or not you want to take testimony at both meetings if you choose to continue the public hearing, or if you would rather wait and have all of that testimony done at the April 21st, 2024 meeting, if that is the desire of the commission to continue the public hearing. So at this point, I would ask the commission to have a discussion as to whether or not they would like to continue this public hearing to the April 21st, 2024 Historic Resources Commission meeting, or whether or not you would like to proceed with the public hearing this evening.
This is Commissioner Klein. I would be in favor of hearing some public testimony today, and then, as you say, to continue the hearing next April and add whatever additional testimony there may be that we don't get to tonight.
I have a clarifying question for Lynn. If we continue this item to next month, then that allows the adjacent property owners additional time to review their position. Does it do anything else? Does it allow for public comment to be turned in for the April meeting, or what is the purpose then?
If the project is continued until the April 21st, 2024 meeting, then you would be able to accept comment up until the April 21st meeting. So there could be continued comments submitted between now and then.
Okay, well, I hear you, Commissioner Klein. I'm wondering, though, if it is better and more fair to allow those people who hadn't received their letters yet and had very little time to consider this proposal the additional month and hold on all the public comment until April.
Well, and this is Commissioner Johnson. We have members of the public here now, though, and so we should be mindful of their time as well.
Yes, of course.
This is Commissioner Hawley. I'm also in favor of opening and holding open. And to your point, for fairness, I think anyone, either electronically or in person, if you attend the next month, the comment would be entertained now. But to your point, I think it would be good. Maybe people are booked in a month. If you're here now and don't want to come back and take the extra time to reconsider, it would be, I think, the right thing to do to hear comments, to hear them now when you're here. But, so that'd be where I'd lean.
Thank you for that insight. All of you, as you can see, I'm remote, so I cannot see how many people are in the room. So thank you for guiding us here, commissioners who are in the room. So then with that, let's open it up for public comment.
Staff would do a brief presentation.
Sorry, Lynn, I just...
So this is the public hearing for the landmark nomination for the First Presbyterian Church located at 2415 Clinton Parkway. This is the property location. This is Clinton Parkway here, and Iowa Street is located on the right hand of the slide over here. It does encompass this entire property that's outlined by this blue line. This is the main elevation of the church. And a close-up of that entryway into the church, showing the front doors and entry as mentioned in the nomination. This is one of the significant architectural details for the modern building. It is the 12 Apostles windows. This is showing the context area for the church, the 250 feet that are surrounding the church that would be considered in that context area and subject to Chapter 22. The criteria for designation to be, we have new criteria in the new adopted Chapter 22. Staff is recommending that this property be nominated under criteria 4, which is for its architecture. The property was submitted to the State Historic Preservation Office and heard by the Historic Sites Board of Review and listed in the Kansas Register of Historic Places. It is now pending. It has a recommendation from that board to the National Park Service to be listed in the National Register of Historic Places, and that nomination is pending. So staff is recommending that the building meets the criteria for its architecture. And then there are several questions that have to be answered in a report that's forwarded to the City Commission, and we can go through those at your meeting next month when you need to make a formal adoption of a resolution. So staff is recommending that you continue the public hearing to the April 21st, 2024 Historic Resources Commission meeting. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions you might have.
This is Commissioner Klein. I just wanted to clarify, I think our next meeting would be April 18. Is that correct?
Is it the 18th? I apologize.
I think so. When I'm looking at the third Thursday.
That it should be the third Thursday. That date might be incorrect.
April 21 is a Sunday.
Oh, well, we don't want to do that.
No, we don't want to do that. I just want to clarify, April 18th.
Okay, it would be that third Thursday, so we'll need to make sure that that's clear in your motion.
Okay.
Commissioner Hawley, Lynn, would it be appropriate, can we ask you questions on the 18th presentation? If this allows for public comment, could we ask you any comments, questions we might have?
Yes, staff will do a brief presentation again and be available for questions at that time.
Thank you, Lynn. Is there a public comment on this item?
Yes, good evening. My name is Jeff Southard. I am the person who made the nomination for my church. I'm an elder there. I got a history degree from KU almost 50 years ago, and this is the first chance I've actually had chance to do something with it. So education does pay off. We would like to have this body take action tonight. To give you a little background, we submitted the nomination in December. It was on the agenda for February, but because of a notice problem, it got rolled over to this meeting. We're now apparently facing rolling over another meeting, and I can't for the life of me figure out why anybody would have grounds to contest this. But the state has already passed on this. I did a 34-page report that went to the state. I don't know if there's anything in your packet or not, but that was some work. Compared to that, this was fairly easy. But we are an historic structure. There's no question that there was a famous designer that did the building. This is a book we used as one of our references. It's called Temples for a Modern God, written by a professor of architecture at Wichita State, Jay Price. He also happens to be the chairman of the state committee, so that helped a little bit. But he mentions Edward Sovick in here repeatedly. Sovick was famous for his non-church design. If you drive by the church, we've had problems over the years, people not knowing it is a church. It's very unique. There's nothing like it in Kansas. It's the only Sovick building in Kansas. So I don't know what somebody could say that they were going to contest the fact that it's an historic structure worthy of listing on the city's registry. It may cause some problems if they want to do some development or within that 250-foot area, but that's a different question. That's for another day. It has nothing to do with the merits of our position on our church should be put on the registry. And the way we got into this, frankly, was our building's over 50 years old. We could have done it several years ago, but we were interested in putting solar panels on the building. And being on the state list gives us access to property credits. There also is the Federal Inflation Reduction Act that allows us to get 30% credits. So we had to jump through those hoops. So this seems to be the logical one to do. We've got 2 out of 3. This would be number 3. So we'll be here in April, but I can't think of anything that's going to come up between now and then that's going to lead somebody to discover that we're not a historic building, that Edward Sovick didn't do it, and we're not worthy of being listed on the registry. I'll take any questions you have. There were pictures attached to the report. I guess you got those. I took those. So, and again, it's a very unique building. If you've not been into it, we have to give you a tour. But it's unlike anything I've seen, certainly in this city, and possibly in the state of Kansas.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the Commission, my name is Greg Musil. I'm with the Rouse Fretz Law Firm, 5250 West 116th Place in Leawood, Kansas. I'm here representing the owners of the vacant property to the west at 2300 Crestline and the contract purchaser of that. I'm also here to speak on behalf of several other property owners who could not be here tonight. I will limit my comments tonight and assume, Madam Chair, that we will be able to make substantive comments at the April meeting and that this is not a one-time opportunity. My main thing
yes, of course.
Thank you. My main thing tonight was to indicate that there are a number of property owners in the context area that are concerned about this designation. And those include 2 apartment complexes to the south, the retail strip to the east. And I know that Monte Sukup is here from the Kansas KU Endowment Association for the property to the north. But our initial procedural concerns are simply the lack of notice. My client received notice last Thursday, and frankly, it's the USPS is now almost unreliable for things, because I think my client address was the farthest away in California, and they were the first one to get the notice, while people here in Lawrence have not yet received their letter. So we would be happy to speak to the substantive issues and may disagree with Mr. Southard in April, but I don't want to belabor that tonight. We would appreciate the opportunity to have more time to review this and to bring substantive concerns to the commission in April. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Lynn, as a point of...
Are there any?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, as a point of protocol, do we need to make how do we proceed? Do we just move on to the next item or make a motion to?
You would need to make a motion to continue this public hearing item for the First Presbyterian Church located at 2415 Clinton Parkway to the April 18th. Let me make sure that date's right. Yes, the April 18th, 2024 Historic Resources Commission meeting.
Jay, did you want to make that motion?
I was just going to say I would move as such, Commissioner Hawley.
And I will second. And I wanted to just make one historical point real quick.
Go ahead.
I missed the original 1898 church that was destroyed by a fire in 1928. So just remember, the original church was at 9th and Vermont. That's all I wanted to say. And I think the modern church is extraordinary.
As do I. Thank you, Commissioner Hawley and Commissioner Klein. We'll take a roll call vote to continue this item to the April meeting.
Well, can I just do a little discussion here just for a second?
Sure.
I wanted to ask staff, have the property owners within that context area met with staff and had explained the consequences of being within that context area, explained to them?
Staff has not had meetings with any of those property owners. We have started some email communication with a couple of them, answering questions, and hopefully we will have time between now and April to answer their concerns and questions.
Okay, great. That's all. I just wanted to check on that.
Thank you. If the motion still stands and there's no further discussion, then we'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Haynes?
Commissioner Haynes, aye.
Commissioner Johnson?
Commissioner Johnson, yes.
Commissioner Hawley?
Commissioner Hawley, aye.
Commissioner Ezell?
Commissioner Ezell, aye.
Commissioner Klein?
Commissioner Klein, aye.
And Chair Coleman is an aye. Thank you for your patience, everyone. The next item on the agenda is DR 23-00412.
Okay, give me just 1 second to pull up my set of slides. Oh, that'd be great. Okay, thank you, and good evening, Commissioners. This item is DR-23-00412, and with this application, the applicant is requesting to demolish and construct a new accessory structure at 742 Connecticut Street. The subject property is the R.W. Spar House, which is a designated landmark in the Lawrence Register of Historic Places, and the proposed project requires a review for a certificate of approval. This project was heard by the Commission last month on February 15th and was referred to the Architectural Review Committee. The ARC met with the applicant on March 1st, 2024. The applicant did not want to alter the proposed plans except to replace the vertical board siding with the horizontal board siding. Revised plans that show the change in the proposed siding have been submitted and are included in the packet. And I'll quickly walk through some of the slides from the presentation from last month that show the existing structure and the proposed drawings for the new structure. So this is the location of the subject property, 742 Connecticut Street. This is the proposed site plan for the property, showing the replacement structure here in the northeast corner, adjacent to the alley. This is the main elevation of the primary structure on site. This is the south elevation of the garage structure that's proposed to be demolished. This would be the west elevation of the structure, which you can see the cracking and deterioration in the siding and construction of the wall. This is a view of the northeast corner of the structure. Again, you can see here on the right-hand side of the north elevation, a crack in that siding. And then this is the east elevation, visible from the alley right-of-way. And then inside the structure, this image shows the deterioration in the construction of the wall. It shows the settling and cracking in the foundation floor. And then again, the settling and cracking in that concrete foundation. This is the proposed south elevation of the replacement structure. Again, the revised plans that were submitted and included in the packet, the only change that was made to those plans would be the siding proposed. Originally, vertical board siding was proposed, and they have changed that to being horizontal board siding. And then this is the north elevation of the structure. East elevation of the structure, which would be visible from the alley right-of-way, and then the west elevation of the structure. Staff is of the opinion that while the existing detached garage contributes to the character of the listed property, the condition of the structure warrants demolition. However, compatible replacement plans for a new accessory structure should be approved in order to protect the spatial relationships that characterize the historic property. Staff is of the opinion that the proposed replacement structure is out of character for the listed property. The key concerns for staff are with the proposed shed roof and the overall size and massing of the structure that's created by the proposed roof form, as well as the vertical board siding that was initially proposed. Again, the revised plans have addressed staff's concern with the siding material, but no changes have been made to the proposed size, scale, form, or massing of the structure. Staff is not in support of the proposed project since the replacement plans or the replacement structure would not be compatible in size, scale, form, and massing for the listed property. Oh, and then I apologize. These are two renderings of the southeast view and southwest view of the structure provided by the applicant. In the end, staff's recommendation is that the commission find that the proposed project does not meet the applicable standards for review and deny the certificate of approval for the proposed project. And with that, I'd be happy to help answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Avery before we hear from the applicant, if the applicant is present? No. Is the applicant present or representative?
Hi, I'm Megan Brewery from Hernley Associates, representing the owner. And I have a short presentation to share as well. So, Avery kind of touched on some of these points, but I'm just going to go through my presentation. So again, this is the RW Spar house that we're talking about, and the accessory structure. It's located here on the 700 block of Connecticut Street. Nearby is another listed property, the David Evans house at 715 New York. That'd be this house right here. Can you guys see my cursor?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, great. I just didn't know. Okay, and so I just kind of want to talk about the environs of our property, that the RW Spar house that we're talking about right now. So this is the accessory structure at the David Evans house. Like I said, this is a Lawrence listed property, and this is a previously been approved project. It's a very large garage, as you can see in plan. It nearly spans the entire width of the lot, and it also has like vertical metal siding. I don't think that, I don't know. I wouldn't say that that is in scale or in character with that historic property. So I just think that there's kind of already a precedent that this has been done on the block, so to speak. And then also just saying that shed roofs do exist in the neighborhood. I did a short little alley survey, I guess you could call it, around East Lawrence, and found a couple shed roof structures behind as accessory structures. And this is an example at a Lawrence listed property, the Hendry House at 941 Rhode Island Street. So just to show that they do exist, they are there. It's not totally out of character. And then just going over the site plan, this is the existing site plan with the current garage, and then switching over to the proposed site plan. In terms of the plan, it's definitely in scale. It's basically the same footprint, if not, it's a little bit smaller. So in terms of that, we have no issue. And then in terms of elevation, what you can actually see from Connecticut Street, I don't think is a huge difference. So this top elevation here shows the existing west elevation of the garage with that hip roof. And then you can only see the rear portion of the new garage on the west elevation of this. And you can kind of see that it also, like, I don't know, it has a strong relationship to the house. So I don't think that it's really out of character for this house in particular that has several shed roof additions onto it. So there's that. And then if we look at the north and south elevations, you can see in the black line, we have our proposed structure. And then kind of this dotted gray line is the existing structure. So it's not too much taller than the existing structure, really. If you account for, the very top of that hipped roof. And then again, notice with the site that we slope back down towards the alley. So, it's going to be even less visible from Connecticut Street, from the front of the house. It's really going to it's just not going to be competing with the main house at all. And so then just to kind of give a better idea of what this feels like, we created some, elevations or renderings of what that structure looks like on site. And so obviously I have the house here, and then that shed roof structure back here, just kind of tucked back there. And so then moving on, this is just looking directly straight back at the house, very similar to elevation. You can only see the rear portion of that garage. And then moving forward, this is kind of from 8th Street, looking back between two properties. Again, the shed roof mimics the existing shed roof on the back of the house. That's kind of where we're taking this design from. So I think it's pretty in scale with the existing structure. And then here it is from the alley. Okay. And that is all I have to share. I'm not sure. I can't see who's all here, so the owners might be at City Hall, or I'm not sure, so they might have something to say as well. No? Okay. Thank you.
I think they are present.
Oh, they are. Okay, great.
You're welcome to speak if you would like.
Good evening. It's Kim Ilhart, one of the property owners. I thought Megan did a really nice job kind of showing more of the contextual way that the new how the existing and the new structure are in context with the site. I think some of the additional information and as described, not out of character with the back half of the house that we currently have. Took guidance from the ARC in terms of the materials selection, picking similar lap siding that the additions of the house does have, meeting some of the corner board detailing, showing the kind of the white and then the field, and having similar trim and trim detailing accents. The new structure was mindful that the existing structure wants to be the primary structure. The new one does not exceed the height of the primary structure. It's is shown in some of those elevations, still being mindful that the primary structure is what's being dominant on the site. Are there any additional comments that we can help answer?
Thanks, Kim.
Thank you, Megan.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant or representative from the commissioners? No, maybe this is an appropriate time to talk about what we talked, well, to state what we talked about in the ARC meeting. Commissioner Holly and I met with the applicant and the architect and did talk about those items, the material changes. We also discussed if the roof line should be looked at or modified or not, and how that might impact the interior space and the use of the garage. And ultimately, it looks like they decided to keep the main form of the roof as presented. And I think, Megan, you did a good job tying it back to the context and showing how the building will look in the environment, on the alley and kind of lower than the main house. So thank you for showing that.
Yeah.
Commissioner Holly, did you have anything to add?
This is Commissioner Holly. No, Joy, I think that was a good summary. And Megan, the context images were very useful. So thank you for that. I would say on my leaning, to me, of the previous version of the submittal, the biggest issue I had was with the siding, and that's been, I think, with the siding and the detailing addressed in this, and with the additional images and explanation during the meeting of the context and showing how it does relate to its context more than the previous version of the submission. My opinion is I'd be in favor of this project.
I would tend to agree. Commissioner Ezell, I thought Megan's presentation was very logical and well done. I would tend to allow this as well.
I feel the same. This is Commissioner Klein. I don't know if we need more discussion, if we're ready for a motion or not.
We, I think, need to take some public comment before we hear a motion.
Of course. Sure.
If there is any.
None in the room and none online.
Thank you, Ellie.
Well, this is Commissioner Johnson. I have a question before we go for a motion. perhaps my question is either for the members of the ARC, the architect, or the property owners, as to what is the I don't know what word I want to use, but why can't the existing roof form be duplicated or used or mimicked? Why does it have to be a shed roof?
I would like to say just a bit before Megan or the applicant weigh in. When we discussed that, in the ARC meeting, the existing structure roof was fairly short, and if you notice the photos, the lower soffit of the roof was very, very close to the top of the door. So you can see that it was, as a lot of the houses and accessory structures in this neighborhood are, I think, built for shorter people and shorter vehicles.
Well, can you still have a taller building but the same sort of roof? I mean, can you, with that form, accommodate taller people and vehicles?
I'll just expand on that. Yeah, as Joy mentioned, the current roof is pretty short, and if you're taller than probably 5'8" or so, you'll hit your head on the soffit of the garage. But then also just kind of touching on the point of, this is a new structure. We're not trying to mimic the old structure, try to pretend that it's something old. So I think it's really best to take a modern or, a different approach as a different form.
Was there also some interior organizational?
Oh, yeah, yes, thank you, Joy. We wanted also to have some storage space above the garage door, and so the shed roof allows that possibility.
Thank you for that. Are there any other additional questions or discussions? I think in the thinking through of this proposal, I also had those same questions as Commissioner Johnson. And as we met with the applicant and looked at the context of the neighborhood and the property, I believe that we can and should allow this garage to be built. I think that it is an amenity to the property owner, and the existing garage certainly cannot be kept. It's made with materials that are just not. That would be my opinion.
Are we ready for a motion?
Yes.
Commissioner Klein, I move approval of DR 2300412, demolishing the existing accessory structure and building a new garage as the design, per the change design, or materials in the change design. Change materials in the design.
Lynn Braddock-Zollner, Historic Resources Administrator. Commissioner Klein, would you like to amend that motion to say that the proposed project with the revised design meets the standards of review in Chapter 22, Section 22-507, and the design criteria in Chapter 22, Section 22-508, and approve the certificate of approval for the proposed project?
I do not have those two sections at my fingertips, so I don't feel comfortable adding those two, but I know what you're saying. Can I?
You could say yes as stated by.
Yes, as stated by staff.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Johnson, I second the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Klein and Commissioner Johnson. We'll take a roll call vote now. Commissioner Johnson?
Commissioner Johnson, no.
Commissioner Hawley?
Commissioner Hawley, aye.
Commissioner Ezell?
Commissioner Ezell, aye.
Commissioner Klein?
Commissioner Klein, aye.
Commissioner Haynes?
Commissioner Haynes, aye.
And Chair Coleman is an aye. The motion passes 5-1. Thank you. Good luck with your project. We'll move on to third item, DR 23-00419.
This is another item that you have seen previously. It was on your January agenda. It is for an addition to the property located at 2145 Rhode Island Street. The property is located in the context area of the Adam and Annie Rotman House, located at 2127 Barker Avenue, and the project requires a certificate of approval. This is the subject property, and the new addition would be constructed here on the left side of your screen. And just a couple of photos here again would be the area of the new addition. This is the site plan showing the proposed new addition. This is the existing house here. And then the hatched area here on the left would be the new addition. These are the revised drawings that the applicant submitted after a meeting with the Architectural Review Committee and looking at several design options. One of the big changes is it takes the balcony off the second story addition. It still has a pop-up second story addition, but the balcony has been moved to the side of the new addition instead of the street-facing elevation. And then this is showing that backside of that two-story addition that would be constructed. And then you can see the balcony hanging out a little bit over the edge, which was designed more like a porch to be more in keeping with the context area. This shows behind the existing structure the two-story portion of the structure. And then here's that garage facing elevation that has the porch-like balcony attached to the second floor. So staff is recommending that you find the revised project meets the standards of review in Chapter 22, Section 22-507, and the design criteria in Chapter 22, Section 22-508, and issue the certificate of approval for the proposed project. And I would be happy to stand for any questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Lynn before we hear from the applicant? Nope, seeing none. If the applicant wants to say anything.
Hi, my name is Stephen Caranda. You can see just my stomach here on that camera. I don't know why it's aimed like that. But anyway, I want to thank staff for their time and effort on this. We met with the ARC. We would like this addition because we now have 2 kids that we did not have when we bought this house. The changes in the design were influenced directly by recommendations from the ARC members. We liked their suggestions, so we incorporated them. As you noted, there used to be a big balcony on the front of the house. That has been shrunk and moved to make it less conspicuous and overall smaller. So I would ask that you approve this. As I mentioned, we like the changes they suggested, and I have one small detail to add, which is that my last name is spelled with a K, not a C. It is incorrect in the document, but that's a minor thing. I know the staff had a lot of other things to worry about.
Thank you. Megan, did you have anything to say on this one?
Nothing to add. I think Stephen did a great job summing it up, and Lynn did a great job with the presentation. So we just ask that you approve the project as recommended by staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, so the ARC met on this project as well this month, and we discussed quite a few options for the design, and did some sketches and explored some ideas of making the addition more of its own kind of defined form, if you will. We explored putting moving the balcony from the front to the side, to the back, to the other side, all over. And what was presented here is what I think reflects what we landed on in that meeting, and represents, or Lynn represented it very well in her presentation. Commissioner Hawley, do you have anything to add?
No, that sums it up. It was a very productive session, and I'm certainly in favor with the revised.
Okay, now we'll take, go ahead.
Sorry.
You have something else?
Nope.
Okay, we'll take public comment if there's any.
None in the room and none online.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion from the commissioners?
Are we ready for a motion?
Yes, we are.
Commissioner Johnson, I would move to find that the proposed project meets the standards of review in Chapter 22, Section 22-507, and the design criteria in Chapter 22, Section 22-508, and issue the certificate of approval for the proposed project.
Commissioner Ezell, I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson and Commissioner Ezell. We'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Haynes?
Commissioner Haynes, aye.
Commissioner Johnson?
Commissioner Johnson, yes.
Commissioner Hawley?
Commissioner Hawley, aye.
Commissioner Ezell?
Commissioner Ezell, aye.
Commissioner Klein?
Commissioner Klein, aye.
And Chair Coleman is an aye. The motion passes 6-0. Thank you, and good luck with your project.
Thank you.
Now we'll move on to the fourth item on the public agenda. It is DR 24-00004.
So this is a rehabilitation project, one that I'm super excited about, and I think I told y'all that last month. So we ran through trying to get it back this month so they can move forward because it's such an awesome project. It is a rehabilitation. It's located at 609 New Hampshire Street in downtown Lawrence. It is subject to the downtown design guidelines. It also requires a certificate of approval because the property is located in the context area of the J.B. Shane Thompson Studio located at 615 Massachusetts Street. This is the property location outlined here in this blue-green color. It's a very large industrial complex that used to house the Lawrence Journal-World with the printing presses and offices for that building. The project is actually for the rehabilitation of the entire structure with a phase 1 immediate project for this southern part of the building for a new restaurant. Just quickly around the building, you'll notice that this is the Massachusetts Street elevation. Part of the project would be to go in and open up these architectural detailing areas to have glazing in them to open it up and reactivate the Massachusetts Street pedestrian elevation of the structure. Also, these upper floor windows where these design details are would now be proposed to have glazing in them. And this is just showing a little bit around the building. These garage doors here would be rehabilitated with storefront glazing systems. This is the New Hampshire Street elevation. This would stay basically the same. The door to the large courtyard, part of the project would be to remove the roof on the northern part of the building and have an open courtyard area there. This doorway would still be the access to that main courtyard area. This area over here on the left of your screen would be for the new restaurant. That is the phase that has some concerns for staff that we're discussing this evening. And there's a little bit of a close-up of that area so you can see that loading dock. This shows the breakdown in the how the overall complex will be rehabilitated. This is that area I was mentioning with the city. This is a city-owned property currently. So all of the changes that were proposed for opening the windows and doing storefront infill on those garage door areas were reviewed by staff and found to meet the standards and will actually reactivate this warehouse building to be more pedestrian friendly with this corner of downtown. This 615 New Hampshire Street, 613 New Hampshire Street here is the restaurant that we're speaking of this evening that has the addition and also some changes to that facade. But these are just the renderings showing where I was mentioning on those photographs that they're opening up those architectural detail panels and to have glazing in them. So just quickly, and then here are the garage doors that would receive storefront systems. This is that New Hampshire Street elevation. They're again showing that primary entrance into that large courtyard area. And then here is the restaurant that is the focal point of tonight's design review. A little close-up of this area. When we discussed this project last month, one of the concerns for staff was painting the brick white and the use of wood timber columns. The addition that's shown here with the new brick masonry does not meet the standards for additions in the downtown design guidelines, but there's really no other place. This is a very unique structure downtown. It's a warehouse building, and paper production company building. It's not the typical 3-part storefront, 2-part commercial block building that we have along Massachusetts Street. So it is very different. And looking at places where the applicant could enclose space to use for food preparation, the loading dock here that was on this portion of the building was the most practical for the project, and really the only location that they could do that. So they did propose the addition using a brick material. Brick is an appropriate material for the downtown historic district, but they did propose painting the red brick for the back portion of the building, and then having the wood timber columns. This shows you a little bit better close-up of what that addition would look like. One of the great things about this project is they're also trying to activate that alley side of the building, so they will have an entrance, or it's proposed right now, they're working to have an entrance on that alley side so that you can have more pedestrian activity. This is just showing again that parking area would be utilized sometimes for parking and sometimes for outdoor space. The applicant is working on that. They'll be going through a process with the planning department to define what that outdoor space looks like. But there again, this is the building addition that shows the glazing system for part of that. So for the certificate of approval, staff went back and looked at all the guidelines and looked at the context area of the Thompson studio and found that there are painted buildings in the context area. The subject property is not visible from the listed property. The building itself is so unique that it's really difficult to compare it to any other building in the downtown area, and specifically in the context area. So there's not a lot of pattern that you can use from the design guidelines to work toward this project. So, and staff is of the opinion that because of the style of the building and the properties that are located in the context area, that this meets the criteria in section 22507 and 22508 and recommends issuing the certificate of approval for the proposed project. The downtown design guidelines are a little more tricky. There is a specific guideline that says you should not paint unpainted masonry in the downtown district. We do have a lot of painted masonry in the downtown district. Most of that was done prior to the adoption of the design guidelines, and a lot of it was done during a period of time, and still some people feel this way, that if your brick is in bad shape, if you paint it, it will look better and it will be better. We know, working with the National Park Service, that painting brick is never a good idea because moisture can get trapped inside of the brick and cause brick failure over time to the structure. There's also a guideline that speaks to using unpainted wood in storefronts. And so staff was not supportive of using the unpainted wood timbers as part of the canopy for the proposed restaurant area of the structure. The applicant went to the Architectural Review Committee, and we had several discussions about different things, and probably one of the high key things that was discussed was looking at a material that might be used to create the color of the white building without damaging the brick, which is the primary reason for that don't paint unpainted historic masonry. There was an addenda, an additional letter that came to you this afternoon that was added to your packet. The applicant has agreed not to use the unpainted wood timbers. They will use metal supports in those locations, and they have also proposed a couple of options to use for painting the brick so that it will do the least amount of harm to the historic masonry and hopefully not have those unwanted consequences of painting brick. The downtown design guidelines give the Historic Resources Commission the latitude to look at all extenuating circumstances and make a determination whether or not a project can be approved even if it doesn't meet specific design guidelines. This is one of those times where staff would encourage the commission to have this discussion. It is a very unique building in Lawrence. It is located at the north end of the district and is not specifically the area where the white brick will be added as the addition and the painted brick will be added. Is not in a row with other three-part commercial built historic storefront buildings that we're used to seeing on Massachusetts Street, and that also exist on New Hampshire Street further down the street. It is a unique building. It is a very positive rehabilitation project. Staff is willing to look at the proposals for the products that the applicant has found and would be willing to work with them to try to determine if those products would actually work in this application. And so staff would recommend that you look at all the extenuating circumstances, like the building type, like the fact that there are painted buildings downtown, and have a discussion about those guidelines and whether or not this project could be approved for the downtown design guidelines review, even though it does not meet a specific guideline. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions you might have.
Commissioner Klein?
This is Commissioner Klein. I'm curious to know if we'll obviously discuss, but I'm curious to know if we actually need two separate motions, one for the certificate of approval and the other for the downtown design guidelines.
Yes, you would want to have two motions for actions on this item, since if you determine that you do want to approve the downtown design guidelines, you would have to give a statement as to why you are approving that project when it does not in fact meet one of the guidelines.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other clarifying questions for staff before we hear from the applicant? No. Okay. Is the applicant present and wish to make a statement?
Is it up?
If I can find it.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Patrick Watkins. Dave Herron is with me. He is an architect with Herron and Associates, and Vince Bryant is actually on the call as well. I'm an attorney. I'm representing both of these entities, and we did meet with ARC, and Lynn's done a nice job of describing the project and the context here. Our work with ARC was fruitful, in my opinion. I'd like to have Dave just come up just for a minute and describe a couple of these products that we found so that you all can hear about them. As you know, in the staff report, primary concern is that you might destroy the function and the integrity of the brick. And so we sought out products that might be able to address that underlying intention of the design guidelines. So Dave, you want to just take a minute?
Hi, good evening. Nice to see everyone. Dave Heron and Partners. So we took your recommendation from the last meeting and did some more exploratory information with some product manufacturers, one of which is Prosoco, which has a location here in Lawrence. And their product is the one on the left, the BMC2 Deep Base. Now, just to keep it the language simple, this is a paint. And so when it is applied, it goes on the surface. It is breathable, and it's specially designed for masonry to allow the vapor to escape and to not trap moisture. So both products have that capacity to do this. I'd say the big difference between the Prosoco and the one that I'll describe next, and the stain, is that the Prosoco is face applied, and when it gets put on, it has about a 7 or 8 mil thickness. So if you want to get into like what it really does to the brick other than change the color, it may diminish the texture, because you're only going to have, you know, the coursing joints and the raking of those joints to get the differentiation. So what's interesting to me about the stain, and I've done more, I'm going to read this from the manufacturer. So it is a actual chemical bond. So it actually impregnates the masonry and the outer layer, and it changes the color chemically to whatever color you choose. And that keeps it from peeling and fading and all that. But so it actually becomes an integral part of the masonry. So something to consider between both products is, hypothetically, the BMC2 you could take off at a later date and maybe restore the color of the brick if that was something that we need to address, whereas the stain will be a permanent change in color. But it should retain the texture, and it should, as I said, chemically bond with the brick. So a couple other benefits to that. They use the term color fast. They use inorganic colorants straight from the earth, nothing man-made, so our colors never fade, and which they also include in their warranty. So they have a no peel and a no fade warranty. It is vapor permeable, as I mentioned. A rating of 77 perms. It's incombustible, which means it's not going to add any fuel to fire. Or not have noxious gases or any environmental concerns in case of fire. It stays cleaner. It says our coatings stay cool and have a no static cling common acrylic latex coating. This means dirt and environmental pollutants don't get stuck to the coating itself. So when it's clean or it rains, it actually kind of cleans itself. And it has unique brilliance in color. The light reflects off their coatings instead of reflex like latex paint. So again, I think these two, outside of whether it's a color, are actually viable options in terms of not destroying the brick. So the question then would be, you know, what about the appearance of the texture?
Thanks, Dave. And if there are questions about the products, we'd be happy to spend some time answering those. I do appreciate the staff's work on this, and we appreciate their recommendation approval for the context review. We agree with the statement in the staff report that the proposed project will not significantly impact the listed property. So I'll focus on the design guidelines, which is where the discussion really is to be had. I want to point out that I agree with Lynn's statement about the interpretation of the guidelines. I would point out that if you look at 10.8 of the design guidelines, which is, I think, the design guideline that's being called into question, it actually has some unique language. It says that masonry walls can be painted, but only in rare circumstances. So I think there's a scenario here where you all can say that it does meet the design guidelines, every single one of them. I would also point out that there are a number of pages in this design guideline document that lay out the intention of the guidelines, lay out sort of the thought process behind protecting this historic district. And if you were to read through some of those, you'd find that this project as a whole is a remarkable accomplishment at meeting the overall intention of this really dense design guideline document. There's a set of review principles, section 1.9 through 1.12, which I'll just very briefly cite. 1.9, it's understood that a project might not meet every guideline in order to conform to this document's intent. 1.10, it's not the intent of this document to require existing buildings to always be in full compliance with the guidelines. 1.11, designs and changes approved or rejected elsewhere in the Conservation Overlay District do not necessarily act as a precedent for other designs or changes under consideration. 1.12, city staff and the HRC have the authority and discretion to examine the whole situation or extenuating circumstances in approved projects that do not meet the letter of the guidelines. And Lynn has cited that one. Section 4 is also interesting. It sets out a range of urban design principles, promoting pedestrian-oriented urban forms, maximizing connectivity and access, encouraging adaptive reuse, encouraging creativity, architectural diversity, exceptional design, emphasizing strong mixed uses, maintaining vehicular streetscape and pedestrian traffic patterns, promoting safety and appeal through appropriate boundaries. It's kind of remarkable with a project of this magnitude, 70,000 square feet, you can go through this design guideline document and really identify that, wow, this is meeting every single one of these key design guidelines. I think there's a multitude of reasons to approve this project. I don't need to belabor it. You all have a task ahead of you, and we are happy to facilitate a discussion, answer any questions. I would like to remind the board that this is not a designated property. It's not a contributing property to a district. The Q39 portion of the building, the loading docks, is clearly the most troubled portion of this 70,000 square foot complex. When you boil down our project here, one of the things you'll see is that we're talking about 9% of the total project in this part of the facade. And if you were to look at the portion that's going to be street facing, the portion that's going to receive a stain or paint is only 3% of the total project. This building's not fronting Massachusetts Street. It's going to need a lot of work under every circumstance. And because of its setback nature, because it is really withdrawn from the New Hampshire streetscape, I think it's going to need something to draw it out, to make it noteworthy, to make it an exciting place for a company like Q39 to locate. This owner has taken steps to try and identify solutions to the concerns that have been addressed here. And for a multitude of reasons, we think that this is just a great project, not only for downtown, but the greater community. So with that, I'll ask Vince if I've covered anything or if he has anything to add, and we'll stand for questions.
Thanks, Pat. No, I think you represented that very well. Is it possible to share my screen just for a moment?
Yes, it should be. I'll stop sharing.
Thank you. So just to reiterate Pat's point about the small percentage of the property, there's over 700 lineal feet of facade, 240 along Mass. That's all brick, that all stays the same. There's masonry along the alleyway that stays the same. It's currently painted. There, of course, is brick, again, along New Hampshire, and part of this, call it 611 New Hampshire building on multiple faces. So this really is, as Pat said, a small portion. It's set back. The majority of all the brick masonry stays. I would offer that it was always back of the house loading dock type of space. You can see even in its latest bricked in, and this just was a loading dock. It was a back of the house space. I love the idea that Q39 has brought forward to activate the alleyway. And, when you talk about painting masonry, the masonry is already painted. So they want to add a big window here, a doorway and entry in from the alleyway. That will obviously require some cool hanging lights and other pedestrian friendly walkable pathways. I'm super excited that we have Q39's interest to come to Lawrence, to come to this project. I certainly. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicant or for Lynn? Commissioner Klein?
So the restaurant is facing the east. I was wondering.
The factual information, but it is an exterior grade paint or stain application. So it has to be built to withstand those heats. And as you know, bricks tends to draw sunlight and create additional heat. So I'm looking forward to today's answer, but I think this is all specified as outdoor exterior product and has a low fade possibility and heat withstanding.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to Dave's answer as well, but I would suspect that the temperature of the wall will be lowered when coated with white.
Well, so I'm not seeing it immediately on my phone here, and I'd be more than happy to provide you with that information if they have it. But yeah, that was going to be my point, is that it's actually more sustainable to be white because it reflects light and reflects heat. So that's actually a benefit. If we and we were entertaining a darker color on the alley side, I don't think anything. And the reason was for dirt and durability. But again, I think this new stain product that's come to light would allow us to do that as well. So I don't have an answer here other than what the temperature variables need to be when it's applied. But it was tested at 85 degrees and is what it says here. But I'm sure they've done a heat point test. I just don't have that in this data.
Okay, thank you.
Well, and I'm looking at, this is Commissioner Johnson, I'm looking at the technical data sheet, and it says light fastness of color, A1 best in class rating, no color change after 4 years, thermal expansion comparable to the concrete substrate, light fast, color will not fade, weather and moisture resistant, not affected by pollution or acid rain. So that's at least what the technical data sheet says on the stain.
And just to reflect on Commissioner Klein's comment last month was, I haven't seen this product, but I'd be curious. And I have to say, I'm quite amazed at the capacity of this product and what it does. So they told me they used it on the White House. So they've used it on historical buildings, and that's kind of what it's for.
And was that the Prosecco or the Kime?
The Kime.
Yeah, we used the Kime at the Kansas State House as well.
This is Commissioner Ezell. I would just like to say that I've only been on this commission for 2 years, but this is by far the coolest thing I've ever seen come through here, and a lot of you guys have been here a lot longer. I would venture to guess it's the coolest thing you guys have ever seen too, and I, for one, would hate to stand in the way of this project. And if you want to paint 3% of the building with white or even pink, I think I would probably go for it. But anyway, I would go a step further than what the applicant said, and that the building as it is, the world building, at least on the Massachusetts side as is, to me is really non-conforming. There's no glass, there's no openings, at worst, it looks like a prison, at best, it looks like a warehouse. If you guys are gonna cut all these glass openings, it brings it more into compliance with the guidelines. I had lunch downtown today, and I walked 3 blocks up and down, and nearly half of the buildings that front Mass, and these are historic buildings, we're not talking about historic buildings, but the historic buildings, they're either painted brick or they've had ephes put over the brick or stucco over the brick. I think that's a good enough reason that we could look the other way if you want to paint 3% of the outside of this building. And I completely understand why you want to do it. You want to set this off from the rest of the building. It's a huge building, and you want to draw attention to it, and I think that will work. But anyway, I'm totally for this project, as you can see.
Thank you.
I don't know the order of things. Can I throw in a random public comment?
Yes, it is. It's questions to the applicant and then public comment. So now is the time for public comment.
Okay.
Thank you.
Austin Turney. I live in the Samuel Riggs house at 1501 Pennsylvania. And we had a tree fall down and do some damage to some masonry, and are thinking of tuck pointing the whole building in a major project. So I've been spending a lot of time thinking about masonry and dealing with masonry contractors and masonry engineering consultants. But I can see from my past business experience why if you'd have a restaurant in the New Hampshire side with lots of brick facade, you'd want to do something to make the restaurant stand out a little bit. And it's completely understandable that they would want to, give some color to stand out a bit. And overall, as you put it, it's an exciting project for a dead, pretty much a dead building. And this seems a relatively trivial adjustment to make it work.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment?
None in the room and none online.
Okay, thank you. I'm also in favor of this project. The ARC did meet with the applicant, and we did talk about different strategies to make this part of the building that is set back on New Hampshire stand out, and the applicant's desire to paint it white. And that's where the products came forward. And these are proven masonry coatings, these two, that I would not say that they're reversible, but they have been proven not to trap moisture into the surface of the masonry. If water does get into the wall, it won't let out liquid moisture, but it will let out moisture vapor. So I think it's good stuff, but I agree with Commissioner Ezell. I don't think we should let 3% of the facade drive the boat here. And we do have the right to decide that this does comply with our standards and guidelines in some way. And if we take a holistic approach, as Mr. Watkins explained, I think that's a good way to think about it. We often have historic buildings that need to change in some way, and to meet some code or to meet some other goal. And it is a holistic evaluation, and that's why we're a commission, to make these hard decisions. And not every single bit of every single project will meet all of the conflicting and different guidelines, codes, everything that a building should be judged by.
This is Commissioner Johnson. Are we ready for a motion?
Yes.
I move that we find that the proposed project meets the standards of review in Chapter 22, Section 22-507, and the design criteria in Chapter 22, Section 22-508, and issue the certificate of approval for the proposed project.
Commissioner Hawley seconded.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson and Commissioner Hawley. We'll take a vote. Commissioner Haynes?
Commissioner Haynes, aye.
Commissioner Johnson?
Commissioner Johnson, yes.
Commissioner Hawley?
Commissioner Hawley, aye.
Commissioner Ezell?
Commissioner Ezell, aye.
Commissioner Klein?
Commissioner Klein, aye.
And Chair Coleman is an aye. So that motion passes 6-0.
Are we ready?
Do we have a motion, yes, on the design guidelines?
Move to find that the project does meet the intent of the downtown design guidelines due to the proposed painted brick using products that would not damage the brick, and the intent of the downtown design guidelines being flexible for unique projects.
Well done. I second.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson and Commissioner Ezell. It was well stated. We'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Haynes?
Commissioner Haynes, aye.
Commissioner Johnson?
Commissioner Johnson, yes.
Commissioner Hawley?
Before I say aye, does that vote capture the applicant's intent to switch from unpainted wood? Is that implied by them?
I left that out because they're not doing that. They're doing metal now.
I guess I'm asking is.
Oh, do we need to put that in the
Motion
motion?
as formed, is that hooked into that?
Oh,
'Cause it
I
was included in
deliberately
our
left it
packet.
out because that's no longer an issue.
Okay.
I mean, that was
With that in
my.
mind, Commissioner Hawley says aye.
Yeah, okay. We made the commitment in a letter.
Yep.
Okay. Commissioner Ezell?
Commissioner Ezell, aye.
Commissioner Klein?
Commissioner Klein, nay.
And Chair Coleman is an aye, so the motion passes 5-0.
1.
Sorry, 5-1. 5-1. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good luck with your project.
We appreciate it.
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
We look forward to seeing more of it.
Look forward to the barbecue.
Yes. We'll move on to the fifth item, HRC-24-1001.
Okay. Thank you again, and good evening again, Commissioners. This is item HRC-24-1001, and with this application, the applicant is requesting to demolish and construct a new accessory structure at 1224 Rhode Island Street. The proposed project is located in the South Rhode Island and New Hampshire Street Historic Residential District, listed in the National Register of Historic Places. The existing primary and accessory garage structure at 1224 Rhode Island Street are identified as contributing structures to the historic district, and standards 2, 5, 6, 9, and 10 of the Secretary of the Interior standards apply. This map shows the location of the subject property within the historic district. You can see in the top right-hand corner of the slide the subject property outlined in light blue. The listed property contains a two-story detached dwelling and a one-story garage located in the northeast corner of the property. This is a view of the front southwest corner of the primary structure. And in the background, you can see a little bit of the accessory garage structure right here. The primary structure was constructed around 1870, while the garage was constructed later around 1920. This photograph is a little bit blurry, but it shows the southeast corner of the existing garage that the applicant is requesting to demolish. The accessory structure is a single-story wood frame garage with a concrete foundation wall and gravel floor. On the Kansas Historic Resources Inventory, the structure was noted as being in good condition in 2004 when the historic district was listed. For demolition of existing structures, a structural analysis and a repair versus replacement cost analysis is requested to determine the extent of the damage to a structure. The documentation submitted by the applicant indicates that the building is structurally unsound. The walls of the structure are no longer plumb and lean in multiple directions. The concrete foundation wall has several significant cracks, and from the exterior of the structure, the roof appears to sag. Staff visited the site and can confirm that the condition of the structure is as described in the application materials submitted. And quickly, I'll walk through several of the photographs of the existing structure that were submitted by the applicant and taken during the site visit. We'll go back here for just a minute. Again, this is a view of the southeast corner of the structure, visible from the alley right-of-way. And in this photo, you can see the structure visibly leans to the west, since at the corner, the front wall no longer lines up with the east wall of the structure. This shows the west elevation of the structure, which faces the rear of the house. Included on the right-hand side of the screen is a photo from the site visit, where you can see that the structure also leans to the south. This is a look at the north elevation of the structure. And then again, looking at the north end of the structure, but at the northeast corner, where you can see that the structure is leaning again. And then it's hard to see clearly in this image because it's blurry, but at the bottom of the foundation wall, there is a large crack. And then this is looking into the structure, where you can see the east wall is leaning inward, while the bottom is leaning outward. Oh, I apologize. Yeah. And then from the inside of the structure, these are the photos of some of the cracks in that concrete foundation wall. The repair versus replacement cost analysis submitted by the applicant indicates that it would be cost prohibitive to repair the existing structure due to its condition and the amount of work that would be required. The existing garage is a contributing structure to the historic district. Demolition of historic structures is rarely positive because it removes the historic material and destroys the relationships between the structures, landscape features, and open space, and as a result, the overall character of the area is diminished. Given the condition of the existing garage and the cost to repair the structure, staff is of the opinion that the demolition and replacement of the structure would be supportable so long as a compatible replacement plan for a new accessory structure is approved. This is the proposed site plan for the property, showing the location of the proposed replacement structure in the northeast corner of the property, adjacent to the alley. The new structure would be placed generally the same location as the original structure, but would have a larger footprint than that original structure. This would be the south elevation of the proposed garage. The proposed structure would have a gable roof with the ridge of the roof running parallel to the alley. The structure would be 2 stories tall with an overall height at just under 22 feet. The proposed structure does not include a lot of fenestration or other architectural detail that would contribute to the overall character of the property in the historic district. The structure would have an overhead garage door on the south elevation with 2 windows above the garage on the second floor. An entry door would be located to the west or on the west elevation of the structure facing the house, and 2 windows would be provided on that same elevation on the first story to the left of the entry door. There would be no fenestration provided on the north and east elevations of the structure. The materials proposed would include horizontal hardy board lap siding, Anderson 100 series windows, and shingles to match the house. And this would be the north elevation of the structure. And then this would be the east elevation looking towards the structure from the alley. And then this would be the west elevation of the proposed garage that would be facing the rear of the house. Also included by the applicant are renderings of the proposed structure. These first 2 renderings would be looking at the northeast and northwest corners of the new structure. And then the next 2 renderings would be looking at from the opposite end at the southeast and southwest corners of the structure. The location of the proposed structure would be in keeping with the established patterns of the historic district. However, staff does have concerns with the proposed size, scale, and massing of the structure and the proposed fenestration on the south elevation. Most accessory structures within the district are 1 to 1.5 story structures with gabled roofs. The proposed structure would be a 2-story structure with an overall height of 21 feet and 10 inches. The proposed structure, the proposed height of the structure would be comparable to other large accessory structures that have been approved in the district. But having a full second story would be atypical for structures of this type, and it increases the mass and overall size of that structure. Staff is of the opinion that lowering the eaves of the roof, while also maintaining a roof pitch that is compatible with the house and historic district, would help to reduce the mass of the structure and make it more consistent with similar structures that exist in the historic district. As for the proposed fenestration, structures with gable roofs typically have a single window feature or opening within the gable peak, while the proposed structure would only have 2 evenly spaced windows on the second floor above the garage. Because the proposed massing and fenestration of the new garage are not reflective of the patterns established for the structures or for structures of this type in the historic district, staff would recommend that the project be referred to the Architectural Review Committee for possible design refinement that would allow the project to better meet the standards and guidelines and improve its compatibility with the historic district. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you. If there are no questions for Avery, can we hear from the applicant if they're present?
I believe the applicant is present, yes.
Good evening, Lance Adams, Adams Architects, 700 Mass, Suite 307. First of all, thank you guys for inviting us to this and going through the process. What you saw earlier was actually our second design for the garage. Our first design, which I don't know, Avery, if you have that you could pull that up or not. Our first design was actually a shed roof design, much like the one you already just approved earlier tonight. We were informed that that was not an acceptable roof line in the historic neighborhood. So we adjusted, came back with the design you see tonight. The design and the need for the garage stems from the house itself is a small starter house. And like most old houses, it does have a basement. The basement itself, though, is only accessible through the cellar doors on the outside of the house. It also, maybe half of it's actually a basement portion. It leaks. It's an old house. The young couple that currently owns the house, actually, they just had their first child. Hazel's about 6 months old now. They are looking to keep this as their family home. To do that as a young family, they also need to have room for storage. And that's where the upper addition comes on the garage, is to find that area to have storage for this house so that they can maintain the house as a character-defining piece of the environment. We know that we can't save the accessory building as a character-defining item. I don't know who looked at that thing in 2004 and said it was fine. I looked at it 10 years ago and it was still leaning way out like this for a previous client. With that being said, if the existing structure, accessory structure, does need to come down, and we all agree with that. It doesn't have a concrete floor. As you saw in the photos, it has a gravel floor in it. It was never used for much of anything. Some sort of storage, or maybe, I don't know, carriage storage, maybe animal storage in it. There's a divider wall right in the middle of the building as well. So it wasn't even practical to pull one car into the building, even with the low heights that were discussed earlier on the shed roof garage you guys looked at as well. With all that being said, as we explored the building and came up with the two-layer concept to get the storage in it was basically just for relief for the small house that they're in and to help this growing family move forward in the same location that they're at. We do know from past events when we've added on to historic properties, there is a goal so that a common person, not a person with an architectural background or a historic background, can identify that, hey, that is an addition to the historic property. That is something that is not exactly historic. And per what staff is telling us, as you read through it, it's you need to match all the historic. We don't want to create some sort of false historic feeling with this. It is a new building. We are replacing an accessory building that is no longer being able to use. We don't want to come back in and put in a historic feeling of a house, of this structure, and somebody walks down and goes, look at this historic garage that's been here. But it's not. So what we're trying to do is complement the existing structure and complement the neighborhood, but also to have that part and piece to say, hey, you know, it is a new structure. And I think that initially, like I said, we had brought in had submitted a shed roof design for it, and then came back with a second design, which is your more traditional roof line that you're seeing, which is in flavor with the existing accessory building that will be removed from the place. So we've already kind of played through those parts and pieces. The discussion of the houses the accessory garages have basically one opening right in the middle of the front. I think that's acceptable. We can talk with our client. They are online. I believe they are online still with us. But we can discuss it with them as well. But rather than stretching out this simple garage project for this owner and let them, you know, continue down the path of building something that they need desperately for their family, and I'm sure they would love to have it in, you know, before winter hits and they're carrying, you know, the pumpkin seat with Hazel in it, trying to run back and forth, or parking outside in the snow. They'd probably prefer to be in the garage. I would say that rather than going to ARC, we could all agree to remove one of the windows from the front, slide a window over, center it up, and that's part of looking back at the character of the neighborhood and having that piece in there. But that's what I would propose. I would say I believe our clients, they are online. Let them speak as well about it, but I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have about the project and about what our process has been to get to this point. So here is the original up on screen. This was our initial proposal, and this was done to gain storage for the building. So then when we had to change the roof out, we're still trying to find that storage, and that's what grew the project, that second type of roof style, the traditional style, that we lost quite a bit of storage space in it. So.
And Commissioner, staff would just like to explain the reason that we gave that direction to the property owner. Is this is a National Register of Historic Places district. It is not a context review, and so the standards for evaluation are a little bit more stringent, and looking at the overall compatibility of structures in the district. So that is the reason why when we first reviewed this design, this is not typical in the National Register district, and there aren't any forms like this, I don't believe, in this district as far as large accessory structures of this scale.
There is a small stone shed roof structure that is in the district. I would say probably about 8th Street, maybe, by my driving around. But the shed roof does exist. But we were, the client was more than happy to revise this. Once again, with the revision, it did grow in height to be able to accommodate the storage up above.
Thank you for that presentation.
Yeah, Kelly and Sam Nitcher, Hazel Nitcher, were the owners of the house, and we think Lance did a great job at summarizing our feelings. We, like you said, are desperately looking for more storage, and our intention with the shed roof was to keep it on the shorter side and not increase the mass, but we are happy to, use the gable roof as is more historic, but the project grew because of that. And if we were to have to keep the gable roof and reduce the overall size to 1 or 1.5 stories, we would not get the storage that we would need, and it would not make the project worth it. So that's our general feeling. I don't know the exact bounds of the historic district that you're referencing, but there are shed roofs, large shed roof garages just on our alley even, including, and also new structures that, have metal siding and things like that. So we're making an effort to be as historic as we can while still making it usable for 2024 and beyond.
Yeah, and I believe that structure you're referring to is right at the corner of 12th and Connecticut. So it is.
Yes, 1201 Connecticut.
Yeah, it is not actually in the district because the district goes right down your alley and then to the west. So, but absolutely, it's visible from where your garage is, yes.
Yes. That's, I think, all we have to add, but we would appreciate approval of it in this current form. But if we need to do further discussions with the ARC, we will do that. But we think our current design is in keeping with the character of the house, in keeping with the neighborhood, and is appropriate for approval.
Thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicant? If not, we can take public comment at this time, if there's any.
I'm not seeing anyone here for public comment.
Okay, I think that I agree with Lance. I wonder what was the thought process when the garage was first, the existing garage was first labeled as contributing. Maybe it has the forms and it has the age, but it, I think, was built in a way that is not to last. It doesn't even have any kind of sheathing behind the siding, and you can see the holes, the gaps in the siding from the inside from the photos. So we don't like to approve demolition by neglect, but this, it appears to me, even if a person would try to maintain it, they would not be successful. I just wanted to put that out there as a beginning. Can we have some discussion about this idea of the request not to go to the ARC, which I think he was saying that adds time to their schedule that they'd rather not add. But of course, as we know, ARC's purpose is to talk about these design details, not to completely redo the submission.
Well, this is Commissioner Johnson, and I appreciate you not bringing forward a shed roof. Thank you. As probably my vote earlier indicated. I think this is awfully close. I wouldn't, I would not be the one to be able to recommend tonight what should change, but I would want to indicate that that I would be supportive of this. It looks appropriate to me, but it sounds like there are certain details that could be improved, and so that's where I'm at.
I think, I don't know if it's appropriate for me to speak right now, but the two things that were flagged in the staff recommendation were the window. We have two equal distance windows versus one center window, and then the massing of the project. I think we would be open to, as Lance said, changing to one center window if we can keep the massing of the garage so that we have the storage, and if it's something that we can say tonight that we would, amend those windows as recommended by staff, we would be happy to do that. But I think we would have a hard time coming to agreement on changing the ultimate size because of the roof structure and just what we need the project for. So if we were going to spend the investment on this, we would want it to be a usable structure for us, and without that storage, it wouldn't be.
As well as maintaining the viability of staying in the home for kind of a maximum time frame that we can.
So,
well, to address Commissioner Johnson's comment about what the Architectural Review Committee might look at, I think we would look at the roof pitch and maybe the height of the gable and the height of the sidewall to make the pitch more or steeper, maybe. In addition to the central window and a window that's proportionally like other windows in the district.
Sure, and if I could speak about the height of it, the pitch of the roof is set such a pitch that the accessory building is secondary to the main building. We have about 6 or 7 inches if we're setting both buildings at the same grade level. Obviously, the garage is several feet lower on the site than what the main structure is. But if you were setting them both at ground 100, you have 5 or 6 inches difference between the roof heights. So that's why the pitch is not as steep as you may have considered it to be. And that's once again trying to be within the guidelines set forth.
So Lance, what's the floor to ceiling height of that second level?
Yeah.
We did I believe a 7-foot tall sidewall, and that is your minimum head height requirements. Unless you're on a stair at 6'8", I know, Joy, you were running through that for me, but.
You could lower the sidewalls, but you'd have to put in a structural ridge or something, I suppose.
Right. The other item that comes in, there's a set of stairs in the back of the garage, and to make them a single run straight up, if we lower the sidewalls, then it impacts the stair because the stair pretty much takes up the entire
okay.
back end of the structure. And so typically to avoid something like that, you would then 90-degree the stairs back. At that point, then you can't park your car in there because.
Right.
So you can see it kind of starts spinning off of itself on where you're trying to end up at. And unfortunately, yes, the shed roof does work because of the way the stairs come up on the high end, yes.
Commissioner Hawley, any thoughts?
Joy, just to clarify, I think where you're going with the comment, but I just want train of thought, were you thinking stepping aside the issue of the stair, which is a very real issue, were you going with the ARC potential to look at the roof pitch because pitching down would change the overall, diminish the relative massing and make it more compatible in keeping with guidelines, which does not solve the geometric issue of the stair? I'm just trying to, is that where you were going?
Yeah, that's where I was going, but it would lower that sidewall height and create a head issue at the stair landing potentially. I don't know. I mean, it's Lance's design, so he'd be the one to talk about that. But these are the types of things we would talk about at the ARC meeting, and that's why we have that committee, because it would, if we designed during this meeting, it would make the meeting very long.
Well, you know, I feel that, and as Kelly has stated as well, if we are really looking at moving a window, I would hate to delay the project another month to come back and go, yep, we moved the window. It's, you know, it's not worth the time on the project. It's the other thing as a small business owner that I have to look at, which I know you guys don't want to hear the whiny architect, but you know, what is the design budget on a garage? What is that, and what do you charge a small family trying to start out and do the right thing? We can't design the garage mahal. That's not what we're doing, and we're doing fees to reflect that. As we extend time and money, I don't want to have to push that back to my client to say, hey, you know, we did an hour meeting. I had to have people do this and that. So we moved the window that we talked about in the meeting, and you know, additional service to you is $700 from the architect. And it's like, well, I guess that paid for the double window. So, you know, it's things we need to think about as we move through these. Is there a faster process, especially on small projects like this? This is not, you know, an earth-shattering decision. It's the old garage used to come down. We've all agreed on that. It's what is the new garage? Does it meet the intent? Yes, it does. It's a secondary structure. It's lower than the main structure. It's ticked all those items. It is a new structure. You know, we look at design and design again as I bring stuff through here. It's not necessary that we match exactly the old structure or the existing structure. We want to be able to tell that that is a new structure. So I think if we went through and looked at, there's a couple new houses going in on New Hampshire that are in the district. I think if we looked at the designs of those houses, are they historic looking or are they a new modern style? Because they are new into the district. The old houses had to come down. We didn't match the style of the existing houses. There'll be a new modern style, much like what was on the corner of 1201 Connecticut, which is fine. It's a great thing. And I think that helps the public know, hey, you know, we weren't able to save everything. We still have to use it.
Are we ready for some sort of motion? I mean, I'll propose one, and if people don't like it, we'll
yes, if you'd like to propose one.
So I would propose that we find that the proposed project meets the standards of review in Chapter 22, Section 22-507, and the design criteria in Chapter 22, Section 22-508, with the change to a single centered window on the garage door side of the building, and issue the certificate of approval for the proposed project.
This is actually, I think that might have been the wrong motion. This is for item HRC-24-1001, 1224 Rhode Island Street, and it's a state law review.
Well, I mean, since staff had recommended just sending it to the ARC, I didn't have a good sample to go by. So I retract that, and however we need to say that. Or nobody may second my motion, so there you go.
I just want to say that we need to get off because our baby needs to go to bed, so we'll let Lance finish for us, but we thank you for your time and
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm in agreement with you, Bonnie. I'm willing to second the motion. Basically, what we're saying, I think what Bonnie and I are both saying, is that we don't believe it needs to go to the Architectural Review Committee, that we can, that the motion is to approve a certificate of approval tonight. Is that correct, Bonnie?
Well, with doing the single-centered window.
Agreed, yes.
Yeah, I think if you look under the Vermont Street language, you'll find your state law review.
I'm sorry. I'm getting tired and hangry, so I'm not going to be so good at doing these motions. So, so is it page 256?
I'm looking at the agenda.
If you look at your agenda under number 6. There's an action for state law.
Okay. In accordance with the Secretary of the Interior Standards, the standards of evaluation approve the project and make the determination that the project does not damage or destroy any historic property included in the National Register of Historic Places or the State Register of Historic Places, Register of Historic Kansas Places. Certificate of approval, find that
you don't need that one.
Okay. All right. There you go. Boom.
Commissioner Klein, seconds.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson and Commissioner Klein. We'll take a roll call vote at this time. Commissioner Haynes.
Commissioner Haynes, aye.
Commissioner Johnson.
Commissioner Johnson, yes.
Commissioner Hawley.
Commissioner Hawley, aye.
Commissioner Ezell.
Commissioner Ezell, aye.
Commissioner Klein.
Commissioner Klein, aye.
And Chair Coleman, I'm going to have to say no on just the basis of I believe that a project like this should go to the ARC, but the motion passes 5-1. Thank you. And good luck with your project.
Thank you.
Okay, now we are moving on to the 6th item, HRC 24-1004.
This is a project, there's actually a rehabilitation that has taken place in this building. Most of you will know it as the Capital Federal Savings Bank building located at 1046 Vermont. It is in the Downtown Design Guidelines Overlay District. This shows the property location here in the blue area with Massachusetts Street on your right, Vermont Street on the left, and then 11th Street to the south of the property. We are lucky that we do have the original drawings for the structure. And if you'll notice here on the tall stone pier, there were historically lettering of 2 different fonts for signage on this structure. This is an early photograph of the building once it was constructed before the first remodel of the building took place, showing signage on that pier. And this is a photograph showing the structure after this portion of the building was remodeled, which ended up causing it to be considered a non-contributing structure, but there was still signage up on the pier. This shows the building as it is today with no signage. And this is the proposed signage for the building. There would be this sign on either side of the stone pier. This is a little bit unique. The certificate of approval, it does meet the design criteria. There in the new chapter 22, there are specific design criteria to utilize for review, and it did meet those criteria for approval. For the state law review, staff looked at this, and even though the design of the sign is significantly different since it's not the individual lettering and it is illuminated, the building was designed to have signage in that area, and staff felt that putting signage back in that area, even though it's of a different style, would meet the Secretary of the Interior standards, and is recommending approval of the project for the state law review. The concern came with the downtown design guidelines. The guidelines have some pretty important applications when it comes to signage in downtown Lawrence, and the primary idea about that is that it be pedestrian oriented, that it not be mainly designed for vehicular traffic, so that we keep everything at a pedestrian level and a pedestrian setting for the historic district. The sign placement up tall on the pier does not meet that guideline for pedestrian orientation. So staff could not approve this sign administratively, and is bringing it to the Historic Resources Commission for review because of this. As we mentioned with the earlier project for New Hampshire Street, the design guidelines do give you the latitude to look at extenuating circumstances and when you're reviewing projects in the downtown overlay district, and this is one where staff would encourage discussion about looking at the uniqueness of this building. It is not a building that is designed in the typical historic three-part commercial, three-block commercial buildings with the three-part commercial storefront that we have along Massachusetts Street. It is a freestanding building. We do have documentary evidence that there was the intention for signage to be located in the proposed site. And so staff is of the opinion that because of these extenuating circumstances, and that this is a very unique application, that the proposed signage could be approved for this location, for this structure, even though it's not typical in the overlay district, and make clear that it is because this is a unique circumstance. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions you might have.
Thank you, Lynn. Did you state that the sign on the tower would be illuminated?
It is illuminated, yes.
Yes, okay, thank you. Thank you. If there are no questions for Lynn other than that, is the applicant present?
Matt Herrick with Fast Signs on behalf of Sigler Pharmacy. So, as Lynn did a great job of pointing out, that tower did have signage on it. And part of the Historic Resources Commission and the sign code down there is to maintain the historic and the design standards of the buildings as they were built. That building was built and those towers are built to have signage on them. So it is within the design standards and the architectural standards to have signage on that tower. Now, in other parts of the sign code, there are also exceptions that have been drawn out for medical facilities and doctor's offices. And this is a pharmacy. It is considered a medical facility. They do shots, they give flu shots, COVID shots, so it is a medical facility. And most of these exceptions that are given in other parts of the sign code are done for better visibility, so people can find these facilities. This facility has a drive-through window, so people are going to be driving their cars to get to this facility, and from further away than just a walking distance. So if you guys are like me, the older you get, the worse your eyes get. You want to have better visibility. These 80-year-olds driving their car down there at 6 o'clock at night in a January, they need to be able to see this pharmacy and have the big mortar and pestle. Everybody knows that means pharmacy. So for the better visibility, and because the design intent of this building was to have signage up there, I would encourage you to please support this project. And if you've got any questions for me, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Thank you. Commissioner Klein?
I can't, somewhere in reading the whole proposal, I saw something about electronic messaging. Was that like an earlier idea to have an electronic messaging sign up there? And then that got dropped, and now it's the mortar and pestle. Could you clarify that, please?
No, we never wanted to have an electronic messaging up there. It just doesn't fit with downtown. It doesn't fit with the purpose of the pharmacy. That's part of the sign code. It's one of the boxes you have to check. So you may have seen it on there, but we check no.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, if there are no other questions, now is the time to take public comment, if there is any.
Not seeing any public comment.
Okay. Discussion? Or a motion? Anybody ready?
This is where I opened up my first bank account when I was like 9 years old. $5. I was rich.
That's great, yeah.
I would like to hear from Commissioner Haynes about the next door neighbor here.
Commissioner Haynes, thank you, Commissioner Klein. We would have no reason to object to this project. I think the speaker earlier was perfectly reasonable in saying that people need a highly visible sign for a pharmacy. And I think that there's really no reasonable objection that you could make for this project.
Commissioner Hawley, I would move that we issue the certificate of appropriateness for the proposed project.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawley and Commissioner Klein. If there's no further discussion, we'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Haynes?
Commissioner Haynes, aye.
Commissioner Johnson?
Commissioner Johnson, yes.
Commissioner Hawley?
Commissioner Hawley, aye.
Commissioner Klein?
Commissioner Klein, aye.
Commissioner Ezell?
Commissioner Ezell, aye.
And Chair Coleman is an aye. Motion passes 6-0. Thank you, and good luck with your sign.
Excuse me, Chair Coleman, you would need to do a separate motion and vote for the downtown design guidelines that stipulates the reason for the approval while it doesn't meet the guidelines.
Yes, that is right. And we
Commissioner Klein moves that we find that the proposed placement of the sign does meet downtown design guidelines from the 1950s, And that because the original design for the building had signage in the proposed location, and the proposed location is appropriate for this building, although it's not typical for the overlay district. Did I word that properly?
Sure, I'll second it.
Sounded good to me. Was that okay, Lynn?
That'll work.
Okay. Commissioner Haynes.
Commissioner Haynes, aye.
Commissioner Johnson.
Commissioner Johnson, yes.
Commissioner Hawley.
Commissioner Hawley, aye.
Commissioner Ezell.
Commissioner Ezell, aye.
Commissioner Klein.
Commissioner Klein, aye.
And Chair Coleman is an aye. This is one that has three parts. Did the certificate of appropriateness vote cover the state law review and?
No, the way the motion was made, it was only for the certificate of approval. So you should do one last motion for the state law review.
Commissioner Klein moves, in accordance with the Secretary of the Interior's standards, the standards of evaluation, approve the project and make the determination that the project does not damage or destroy any historic property included in the National Register of Historic Places or the State Register of Historic Places, meaning the Register of Historic Kansas Places.
Commissioner Hawley, second.
Thank you, Commissioner Klein and Commissioner Hawley. Commissioner Hayes, let's take a roll call vote. Commissioner Haynes.
Commissioner Haynes, aye.
Commissioner Johnson.
Commissioner Johnson, yes.
Commissioner Hawley.
Commissioner Hawley, aye.
Commissioner Ezell.
Commissioner Ezell, aye.
Commissioner Klein.
Commissioner Klein, aye.
And Chair Coleman is an aye. Now the motion passes on all three counts. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the last public hearing item, HRC 241002.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Again, this is item HRC-24-1002. And with this application, the applicant is requesting to construct a concrete parking area at 927 Louisiana Street. The subject property is located in the Oriad Historic District, listed in the National Register of Historic Places, and District 5 of the Oriad Neighborhood Design Overlay District. Both the principal and accessory structure on the property are identified as non-contributing structures to the historic district. The neighborhood-wide design guidelines in Chapter 4 of the Oriad Neighborhood Design Guidelines and Standards 1, 2, and 9 of the Secretary of the Interior standards apply to the proposed project. This is a map showing the location of the subject property within the Oriad Historic District and District 5 of the Oriad Neighborhood Design Overlay District. District 5 of the Oriad Neighborhood Overlay District is identified by the orange area. The boundary of the Oriad Historic District is outlined in red. The subject property contains two existing structures, a single-family dwelling and an accessory structure. This shows the front east elevation of the primary structure, and in the background you can see a little bit of the roof peak of the accessory structure over here. The Kansas Historic Resources Inventory states that the primary structure was constructed around 1905, and construction of the accessory structure took place sometime after 1949. Both the principal and accessory structure are listed as non-contributing structures to the historic district, and KHRI notes that the house is a non-contributing structure due to its synthetic siding, but that rehabilitation may alter its contributing status. This photograph was pulled from a real estate listing online for the property and shows the rear west elevations of the two structures, as well as the existing gravel parking area that's just off the alley. The principal structure is currently a single-family dwelling, and the applicant is seeking to convert it into a duplex, which requires additional off-street parking spaces under the Land Development Code. The property contains 3 existing angled parking spaces located along the alley in the gravel area shown here on the screen, but 3 additional parking spaces would be required to comply with the Land Development Code. The applicant is requesting to construct the proposed parking area to accommodate the increase in off-street parking required for the converted duplex use. This is the proposed site plan submitted by the applicant, which shows the area or the location of the proposed parking area outlined in red. The size of the parking area would be approximately 25 feet deep by 24 feet wide, and the parking area would be accessible from the alley. In February, a variance request was submitted by the applicant to the Board of Zoning Appeals to reduce the number of required off-street parking spaces from 6 to 3. The Board of Zoning Appeals found that the request did not meet the 5 conditions required to approve a variance and ultimately denied that request. The applicant has indicated that the existing site conditions do not allow for expansion of the existing parking area along the alley, so they're proposing to locate the parking area in the side yard south of the primary structure and to the east of the accessory structure. The location of the proposed parking area does not meet the Secretary of the Interior standards for state law review or the Oriad neighborhood design guidelines for parking. The established patterns of the Oriad Historic District do not include parking in side yards. Instead, parking is located in rear yards along alleys, while side yards provide open space that contributes to the views and light quality of neighboring properties. The guidelines provide 2 diagrams on screen and state that detached dwellings and duplexes may construct parking spaces in accordance with the diagrams. For the state law review, standards 2, locating a parking area in the side yard to satisfy the off-street parking requirements for the converted duplex use would be considered a significant alteration to the site and the distinctive spaces and spatial relationships that contribute to the historic character of the property and the historic district. Again, for the state law review, the standards speak to preserving and maintaining the historic spaces and spatial relationships that characterize a property or district. Locating a parking area in the side yard to satisfy the off-street, that would be considered a significant alteration to the site to accommodate a new use. Parking in the side yard would diminish the historic character of the property and neighborhood by disrupting the established rhythm and patterns of the district. Staff recommends that the Commission finds that the proposed project does not meet the Secretary of the Interior standards for state law review or the Oriad Neighborhood Design Guidelines and the intent of the Oriad Neighborhood Design Overlay District and deny the proposed project. With that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions the Commission may have.
One quick one, Avery, just to advocate, since the BZA has already ruled on this, is the applicant, what's the process here?
So the applicant submitted the variance request to reduce the number of off-street parking spaces required to essentially maintain the existing conditions of the property. Since that request was denied, they are still required to provide full 6 parking spaces required by the Land Development Code in order to establish that duplex use. Again, the applicant has indicated that expanding the existing parking area to the north, it would be of the existing gravel parking area, wouldn't be possible due to certain or the existing site conditions, and so that is why they have proposed the parking area in the side lot.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
This is Commissioner Klein. I have a similar kind of a question. So the applicant is working on parking before they're working on a proposal to redesign the single-family home into a duplex. Is that correct?
So a building permit application has been submitted for interior work to renovate the structure. Those improvements or changes to the structure do require a design review for conformance with the state law review and the Secretary of the Interior standards. And that review started administratively. It's my understanding that the interior work proposed within the plan submitted as part of the building permit application meet the standards or the Secretary of the Interior standards, but the proposed parking area in the side lot to accommodate that use does not meet those standards.
All right. Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Why did you?
So Avery.
Why did you say that there couldn't be more parking off the alley?
That is what was indicated in the application materials submitted by the applicant. I don't know if they're here tonight. I haven't heard back from them.
Looks like they might have to take some trees out.
Right.
I just wonder if that's it. I don't know.
I think that the building locations or locations of the existing structure, as well as the grade, changing grade along the alley, there is a significant slope, is why they have indicated that it would be infeasible.
Retaining wall.
But if they did propose additional parking along the alley, that would be in that would meet the design guidelines, would it not?
Correct, and it would meet the standards for state law review.
Commissioner Klein here. Could you remind us, did we receive any late communications on this particular proposal?
There's not enough space.
That came into our packets later, like earlier today or something, later this afternoon?
No.
Okay, so there's no communication. Thank you.
That's too narrow for city code. They didn't know it's too narrow. It'll need to be. Could you park there? Yes. It'll be a different variance. That'd need to be 18 feet.
Okay, so have we determined that the applicant is present or not?
I do not see them. It is
motorcycles.
LED.
Scott
Attenberry. Atberry is the applicant, and I don't see his name on the.
Yeah. I'm not seeing them online.
Okay, well, I certainly see that the side yard parking area is not compliant with the guidelines, and I wonder what the accessory building is. It looks like a garage, but perhaps it's not.
Right, I think the applicant indicated that it was a garage structure, but being off the alley, or in its current configuration, it doesn't have a garage door opening on that west elevation of the structure. I'm not familiar if there are openings on the other side of the structure.
Chair Coleman, since the applicant is not here, you may want to go ahead and take public comment and then have a discussion between the commission whether or not you would like to defer this item to allow the commission the opportunity to have a discussion with the applicant as to why he feels it is infeasible to meet the parking requirement along the alley, since that does not look like it is part of the application that's before you this evening.
Thank you. So at this time, we'll take public comment if there is any.
I'm not seeing any.
6 spaces in there, demolish the garage.
Okay, so it seems that we have two options. One is to make a motion to either deny the request or otherwise, or we could delay to the next meeting and allow the applicant to answer some of these questions. If I were making a motion, I think I would move that the application does not comply with the standard. Oh, now I've lost the words, Jeannie.
Have this down. Let me see. I believe there's two motions that need to be made, and I can go ahead and make these motions. This is Commissioner Klein. I move that we find that the proposed project does not meet the Oriad Neighborhood Design Guidelines or the intent of the Oriad Neighbor Design Overlay District, and deny the request to construct a parking area in the east side of the yard at 927 Louisiana. That's part one.
Commissioner Johnson, second.
Thank you, Commissioner Klein and Commissioner Johnson.
This is Avery Kerner, planning staff. Sorry, I just want to add one slight correction. It wouldn't be the east yard, it would be the south side yard.
Okay, the south side yard. Wherever it's next to the house. It should not be next to the house.
Yes. Okay, we'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Haynes?
Commissioner Haynes, aye.
Commissioner Johnson?
Commissioner Johnson, yes.
Commissioner Hawley?
Commissioner Hawley, aye.
Commissioner Ezell?
Commissioner Ezell, aye.
Commissioner Klein?
Commissioner Klein, aye.
And then Chair Coleman is an aye.
Okay, then Commissioner Klein moves the second motion here, that in accordance with the Secretary of the Interior standards, the standards of evaluation, find that the proposed project would damage or destroy the historical property included in the National Register of Historic Places or the State Register of Historic Places, otherwise known as the Register of Historic Kansas Places, and therefore deny the project, the parking proposal.
Commissioner Johnson, second.
Thank you, Commissioner Klein and Commissioner Johnson. Take a roll call vote. Commissioner Haynes?
Commissioner Haynes, aye.
Commissioner Johnson?
Commissioner Johnson, yes.
Commissioner Hawley?
Commissioner Hawley, aye.
Commissioner Ezell?
Commissioner Ezell, aye.
Commissioner Klein?
Commissioner Klein, aye.
And Chair Coleman is an aye as well. Thank you. That concludes the public hearing items. We'll move to miscellaneous items. There seems to be a rezoning request, Z2300445.
Yes, Commissioners, this is a rezoning request that's going to the Planning Commission next week. It is rezoning 2.59 acres from RS10, which is a single dwelling residential district, to RM12, which is a multifamily residential district. The property is 340 North Michigan Street, which is listed in the Lawrence Register of Historic Places. As part of Chapter 22, you have the opportunity to comment on rezonings for properties that are listed in the Lawrence Register of Historic Places if you choose to. It is not required that you comment. but particularly if it is a listed property, that is a comment that you would send to the Planning Commission, and that would be forwarded with the Planning Commission recommendation to the City Commission. This property is also listed in the National Register of Historic Places, and staff did the required state law review for the rezoning request. It was a very challenging review and worked with the State Historic Preservation Office to look at the review of this project, because the National Register nomination and the Lawrence Register nomination speak to the context of the Stevens house and the open farm-like setting of the area being a contributing factor to listing the property. So with a rezoning request, the ability will be available for the property owner to subdivide the property and intensify the structures that would be located on that property. The application that was submitted to the planning office does not include plans for the subdivision of the property or adding additional structures to the property to meet that RM12 zoning district. The reason the applicant has submitted the proposal is because they would like to do an Airbnb at the property, and that is not allowed in the RS10 district without the property being owner-occupied. The applicant does not want to do an owner-occupied Airbnb. He wants it to be standalone. And looking at the available zoning districts that would allow that use, chose the RM12 multi-dwelling residential district as the district that they would like to rezone to. One of the key points that staff would like to make would be when you're looking at projects for review, this project in and of itself does not contain a component that would impact the listed property, and otherwise there's no design to subdivide the land or add additional multifamily structures to the property. So this particular project of rezoning in and of itself does not impact the listed property. However, having the land entitlement to do those things could potentially impact the property in the future. So throughout I hope you had a chance to read the staff report. The planning staff did put in there that future development of the property may not meet the Secretary of the Interior standards. And I think that is a very key consideration for this rezoning and for the Planning Commission and City Commission to be aware of. I think it would be appropriate for the Historic Resources Commission to make comment on this zoning application and make the distinction that while the actual rezoning of the property to this multifamily zoning that would allow for potentially detensification of the property with multiple structures on it does not encroach upon or damage the listed property. Future projects could impact the listed property and not meet the Secretary of the Interior standards, which is required to be met by both the local landmark listing as well as the state law review. And I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
This is Commissioner Johnson. There isn't an option for keeping the current zoning and doing a special use permit for the short-term rental?
That's correct. That was not an option that is allowed by our current code.
Well, this is, Oh, I'll let somebody else talk.
Oh, you go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, this is Commissioner Johnson. I have a particular heartache with this in that once it is rezoned, there's the indication that it is ready and acceptable for multifamily and to be subdivided, when in reality it's not because of the historic district. It would be this commission and the historic district status or the historic place status would be what would prevent that zoning from coming into reality for other uses other than just the Airbnb. So this commission would have to hold fast on that and hope that the city commission didn't overrule this commission saying no. So it seems inappropriate to rezone something to multifamily when that isn't the intention. The intention is simply to be able to rent it as an Airbnb. The change in zoning is too large for what is being intended and for what could happen in the future. Also, I'm not seeing in the staff report, and it doesn't look like that this area has been planned with a future land use plan and map to indicate what that area should be in the future. Should it all be agriculture? Should it be multifamily? We don't know. It hasn't really been looked at in that detail. So I'm having frustration with saying that this meets a comprehensive plan when there does not appear to be a future land use map and plan particular to this area to know whether this should be rezoned to multifamily. And I don't like rezoning something to multifamily when, due to its historic nature, it really cannot be used for what that zoning district is predominantly intended for.
Bravo, Commissioner Johnson. I second everything you're saying. This house and property is so crucially important to history. It's so historically significant. And I just recall my research on Kate Stevens, Judge Nelson's daughter, who wrote a lot of essays about the glories of Kansas based on the views that she grew up with on this property, based on the openness and the blue skies and the wildflowers and the, everything else before I-70. And I cannot imagine. I would be horrified if any piece of this property was ever had a Casey's built on it, or had a duplex or a fourplex or what have you. It would just appall me. So I think we need to communicate to the to the Planning Commission and the City Commission in very strong terms that this property needs to say agriculture, single family. What is it currently? Single family or RS10, and keep the agricultural land around it, whatever that current property, whatever the current property boundaries are, need to stay, like you say, for, natural for now.
And we would recommend that a special use permit be created to allow this property because it is in the middle of an agricultural, it's not in a neighborhood, it's not next to other single family homes. It's truly a special condition. Right. And I believe that you're right. They're changing the zoning to meet one immediate need doesn't fit with the intent of why you would change zoning, and it would open it up to be able to be divided and other things later. The special use permit is the route to go, even if one doesn't exist right now.
Exactly.
We would urge them to create one for this special condition.
Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to remember, because the Pellet Village is just south of this, so did the Pellet Village get that was rezoned as well, and I'm trying to remember if it was rezoned from agricultural to
Well, it was a church before, so it was probably zoned.
My memory's fading here. I'm
completely differently.
Yeah, they didn't get a permit, so they didn't have to go through us.
Okay.
It was a school.
Yeah, it was a school and a church.
Oh, was it Veritas?
Yeah.
Got it. Oh, of course. Sure. Okay.
When does that give you enough direction?
I think it would be appropriate if you had a motion and a vote, and in that motion, you don't have to cover all the specifics of this conversation, but can point to the information provided by Commissioner Johnson, and I think Commissioner Coleman added a little bit of information to that too, and we can work that up and get it to the Planning Commission.
I would move that the HRC asks staff to write a memo in keeping with the comments by Commissioner Johnson and Commissioner Coleman.
And Klein.
And send to the Planning Commission.
Commissioner Johnson, second.
And who was the second?
We'll let Commissioner Johnson be listed. All right, let's take a vote. Commissioner Haynes.
Commissioner Haynes, aye.
Commissioner Johnson.
Commissioner Johnson, yes.
Commissioner Hawley.
Commissioner Hawley, aye.
Commissioner Ezell.
Commissioner Ezell, aye.
Commissioner Klein.
Commissioner Klein, aye.
And Chair Coleman is an aye, so that passes 6-0. Is there any other miscellaneous item?
I just have one last miscellaneous item, and that is, with great sadness, tonight is Commissioner Ezell's last meeting.
No.
He will not be rejoining us for a second term. I think you guys wore him out. But I just wanted to go on record as saying what a great asset he has been to this commissioner, and how much I have enjoyed working with him, and think he has brought a great deal of good building construction insight and intelligence to the discussions that this commission has had over the past 3 years.
I concur with that. Commissioner Ezell, you brought logic to our roundabout conversations, and I appreciated that.
Thank you. It's been nice meeting you all. It was fun.
Thank you so much.
If we brought you snacks, would you stay?
And with that, we're adjourned. Thank you all.
Does another board call? I'm going to take some time on. Yes. Is there a replacement?